So the Buddha gave this teaching on Anatta, one of the three characteristics of the phenomena is not self, not me, not mine. And yet most people, I think, are living from an experience of being me and things being mine. So I know a lot of people just decide to overlook that teaching, which is a terrible loss because it's pretty central, and it's very it's a very interesting exploration. So in pointing to anatta, not self, the Buddha is not trying to encourage us to deny a sense of self, because that would be a little weird and crazy, or make us crazy. But he's pointing to what we take to be me and mine, what we think of as me and mine, is part of nature, is a process, and there are ways that when we start practicing, when we start to meditate, then we start changing the patterns of how we arise, I could say. So often, people before they meditate, and then people after they meditate, have been meditating for a while, the way they show up can be quite different, because certain patterns or habits, tendencies start to change. They're transformed through the practice of meditation, through the restraint and cultivation and stilling that happens in the meditation. And even as things change, even as the way we are goes through big changes, which it does from time to time, and maybe incremental changes all the time, we tend to just keep on calling whatever we find here, this is me, and this is mine. We don't necessarily even notice how much it's changed, but we notice the things that are similar, that seem familiar and similar, and so that's what we hold on to. We call it me and mine. And there can be quite strong tendencies. We might have certain perceptions, certain sort of lenses through which we look at life and at relationships and at our experience that were put in place, maybe when we were very young, in our family, culture. And then we tend, if we're not really paying attention, careful attention, and if we're not willing to explore a little bit and investigate, then we tend to just keep reasserting those patterns of experience onto who and what we meet. So if we're a bit fearful and shy, then we might, everywhere we go, we feel a little bit afraid. It might be just a sort of underlying message there in the mind of, oh, got to watch out for this person. Oh, I've got to be careful. This might be like a program that's running in the background that we don't really notice, and we haven't really seen it, haven't really heard it clearly, but it's informing us all the time, and so we're making choices based on an underlying tendency of fear and anxiety. Or it might be anger. We might have a lot of anger, and we might have been maybe encouraged in anger perhaps when we were growing up, or we might be that we weren't allowed to be angry, but there it was. We had it. It didn't have anywhere to go. And then as we grow and have more agency in our life, then now nobody's stopping me. Now I can have this anger, and so there may be an attunement to all of the things that are going to arouse anger. and then we feel it in our body, and it can feel quite empowering. So then we might, want to express that anger, and we feel really powerful. We might even feel like we've won something, and there's this sort of maybe like a bit of a rush that can come from that. And so we seek out, unconsciously seek out situations that are going to bring up those feelings, or we, even in quite okay conditions, we might find something that makes us feel angry, and then latch onto that, and even maybe sort of like put lots of pieces together, of what's going on in our environment, and then say, this is it, I'm sure it's like this, that's their intention, they mean this, and and we put things together that might not be right at all, but it fits with our, in a way, sort of comfortable pattern, familiar pattern of seeing the world in a certain way. Or we may, with greed, oh, this next lovely thing, and oh, another lovely thing, and just going from one thing to the next, and it can be fun, but it's endless. And then it also lacks subtlety. And then it can also move into addiction. So it starts to build a momentum. So all these things, fear, anxiety, anger, ill will, desire, confusion, they have a kind of a momentum. And that momentum gains force. And then the more force it has, the more of a momentum it has, the more sure we are, the more certain we are that what we're seeing or experiencing is aligned with our familiar pattern. And then, we can start to make things accord to that. So if we're afraid of say ordinary situations, then everything becomes fearful, scary. And then maybe, there are people out there, and I think it's kind of an animal instinct actually, that, if somebody's a bit meek and fearful, then there are bullies who like to um, frighten them. This is a sort of pattern that can happen. So then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that can start to happen. And also with anger, if somebody's very angry, and then more and more things start to happen that make them angry. And often people who are very angry don't know, or they think it's not really very angry at all, but other people experience it as very intense, and so then people might be telling them what they're doing, and then that makes them even more angry. Don't tell me like that. I'm not like that. That's not me. You know. And then greed has its very obvious momentum. It's like it's because it's gratifying. It's exciting. It has moments of fulfillment, and then it leaves you empty. And you look for something else, the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and it can really just get you into its into that momentum, into that whirl. So this is what happens if we're not careful, and it feels very, very real and very believable, and very much that the world out there is causing the feelings that we have. And the world out there, that person, or those people, and then we get caught. And the sense of me and mine, it feels very strong because it's got something that it's it's kind of caught around. It's becoming around something. It's becoming around one of those kilesas, one of those defilements, or obscurations of the true mind, the true heart. So it's really helpful to recognize one's tendencies and also the tendencies of our good friends, you know. So if they're really good friends, like Dhamma friends, because we all still have these, not all, not everyone, but many people, many of us, probably most of us, still have these tendencies, even though we've been practicing. You know, they might be stronger or lighter than, you know, they might, hopefully they're not stronger than they used to be, but you know, they may be lighter, but it's still there, you know, still that tendency. And so a good Dhamma friend will be able to show us that, be able to show us the pattern that's causing harm to ourselves and to others. And if we're open enough, then we can hear that. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable to have to hear that. But it's that, what they call the dukkha that leads to the ending of dukkha. It's that really uncomfortable feeling that you feel, you don't want to feel, you don't want to hear it, you don't want to have to acknowledge it, but it is true. And then the feeling of it, the knowing of it, not just knowing it intellectually, but knowing how it feels. Then you recognize, oh yeah, I don't want to keep doing this. Don't want to keep doing this. And so that inspires us and encourages us to change those patterns, which are not easy to change, but they do change. So when the personality is very much caught around reactivity, the sense of self feels very solid, very real, very defendable, and that is dukkha. It's dukkha. It's uncomfortable. And then as we do the work to learn to let go of those patterns, undo those patterns, sometimes it can happen really suddenly that we see something and we recognize what keeps making that thing happen over and over again. And we can change it. Sometimes it can be changed quite quickly, or we can't make it change, but sometimes it can be sort of a sudden shift, which is rather wonderful. And sometimes, you know, we recognize it and then we just got to put the work in. And again, if we have a good friend, someone we trust, we can ask them for help, you know. Can you help me to see this? Can you help me when I get into that thing again? You know, and then maybe figure out a kind way that they can, or a humorous way, that's even better, that they can show you that you're getting caught, and maybe you can show them where they're getting caught too, if they're open to that. And this is a great gift, actually, to have a friend, such a friend, friends who can do that for us. So because the what we call me and mine isn't solid and fixed, we can transform, we can grow, we can develop, we can transform, and we can let go. And if me and mine was a fixed, solid thing, we wouldn't be able to do that. We'd be able to maybe change little things around the edges, perhaps, but basically we'd be stuck. But because there is no solid core self, we have this possibility to transform unhelpful habits and cultivate what is more beneficial. And it can be that we need to really, really give ourselves to an alternative to those old patterns, to put a lot of energy into it, and to let that become the new momentum. Sometimes we have to overdo it, overdo the abstinence or the restraint or the being good. Sometimes we do it a little bit too much. It's almost controlling things too much, but that energy is helping to build a momentum in a wholesome direction. And then once things have come into greater balance, because we don't want, that's a bit of a pendulum swing, we don't want to stay in one end or the other of that. Once things have come into a bit more of a balance, then there can be more of a letting go, because we trust ourselves. We don't have to be on guard all the time. We don't have to be afraid. We trust ourselves, and so that in that trust, there can be a letting go and a generosity also. Generosity with others, generosity towards ourselves. And those inner voices, the inner critic, it's always finding what's wrong, because there always is something, of course, so it'll always find something. And that inner critic, so we recognize that, and it's like, are you really my friend? Maybe not. And learning how to hear it, recognize it, and not follow it. And bring something else up, bring in a new voice of appreciation, of kindness, of generosity, of welcome. Can bring in new voices. So this is part of our ongoing work, and when we get to that place where, when there's enough well-being, where we can let go of the holding on to any of that, holding on to the unhelpful stuff and holding on to the helpful stuff, and just the helpful stuff has got its own momentum going. The wholesome is stronger than the unwholesome. Then it's easier to let go, to open and let go and allow, really just to allow nature to be nature, to allow things to be as they are, and we can experience what greater spaciousness, greater equanimity, greater patience, and understand that not just so not just understanding our own patterning, but understanding, this is the way the world creates itself over and over again through greed, aversion, and delusion. The human world is really good at that. We're experts at it, actually. And then nature is, there's a bit of it in there too, but nature is just doing its thing. It's just acting in accordance with nature. So we're part of nature, and we need to learn to let go of those forces, or counter and then let go of those forces that keep us trapped. And cultivate the good and open to it's hard to put a word on it, the greater mind, you could say, or the awakened presence. So this is possible. This is the work, and maybe sometimes the play that we can do. And well, we can't so much do the letting go. That's a little bit of a fruit, actually, of our practice. But we can invite it. We can remind ourselves it's possible, and then when it happens, not to suddenly rush on to the next thing, fill it up with something, but to appreciate, to dwell in, to be present with. So I offer that today.